Hey guys, Rominating Reaper here. So, it's still October, so that can only mean one thing. Yep, it's time for another spooky month horror review. And so, I've just finished watching Dog Soldiers, directed by Neil Marshall in his feature directing debut. And this is a film that I really wanted to get around to for quite a while now. I've been hearing a lot of great things. And so, since I recently bought the Second Sight Blu-ray with the intent of watching it over October, yeah, I was really looking forward to sitting down and finally giving this film a go. And with it being a fairly low-budget British feature, I was expecting it to deliver a very interesting take on a werewolf movie. But does it actually deliver a fresh take on a werewolf film? Let's find out. So the film follows a squad of army soldiers who head out into the Scottish Highlands for a routine training exercise against special forces. But the squad quickly discovers that it's not special forces that they should be afraid of, as what starts out as a routine training exercise becomes a deadly fight for survival against a pack of werewolves. There's something quite interesting about the fact that this and 28 Days Later came out around the same time. Obviously, both of them being low budget British horror films, and both of them promising interesting, unique things with different horror subgenres. Obviously, 28 Days Later really revitalized the zombie movie. So I was hoping this would do similarly interesting things with the werewolf movie. And I have to say, after years of anticipating, finally watching it, yeah, it delivered. So something I really appreciate about this is just how creatively it gets around the limitations of its low budget. Obviously, yes, it is a very low budget film, but they really utilize that to its fullest. Obviously, it has a pretty surprising sense of restraint when it comes to the werewolves. Not really showing them at all at first, but gradually showing little glimpses of them. I assume for budget reasons we couldn't really get much use of the werewolf makeup, but when they are fully revealed, it's great. The werewolf designs are fantastic. Really lean into that sort of traditional wolf look, and the practical makeup on display is just brilliant. There's also some really great practical gore effects for the werewolf kills. Obviously you've got blood squirting all over the place, and gooey effects for guts being ripped apart. It's fantastic. A really great practical blood effects display. Absolutely wonderful stuff. And there's other really fun creative ways they utilize the werewolves as well. Sometimes we'll actually see stuff in black and white, which is meant to be the werewolf POV, which I guess in a way is kind of the blueprint for the whole wolf vision thing Lee Winnell did for Wolfman this year. But you also sort of see it utilize its smaller budget in other ways as well. Notably in how the story is told. It starts out as quite an expansive tale, set across the woods of the Scottish Highlands. But by the second half, it actually shifts into a more, contained, close quarters tale, set within the confines of a farmhouse. And, it really utilizes that smaller scale setting to wring maximum tension out of, his dangerous central mission. It's great stuff throughout, and with that smaller scale, more tense focus, it really allows the story to be that much more gripping. Now, admittedly, the story does get off to kind of a bumpy start, with the sort of jumping around the timelines. Don't get me wrong, the stuff set up in those sort of shifts in timeline are important to the overall story. But if I do feel a bit like the way they're introduced is kind of clunky. So it means that obviously, once we actually get into the main meat of the story with the soldiers on this training exercise, when we meet them, the story really does begin to kick into gear. And it helps that the soldiers are, really likable and, fairly well developed characters. Obviously, our two, like, I guess, leading points of view in here are, the character of Sergeant Wells, who's played by Sean Pertwee, and the character of Private Cooper, played by Kevin McKidd. Obviously, these two are great. Wells is, battle hardened, and he's, he can pass on that wisdom to these, younger soldiers, and Cooper is, very much driven by, a sense of, willing to do the right thing, and has to sort of learn that sometimes he has to make, difficult choices. The two of them are great, and in fact, all the sort of soldiers are very likable as well, like the likes of, like, Spoon, Joe, Terry, Bruce. They're all great, great characters, and they, the film fits in some great moments of character development in the action, and also some well-placed organic moments of humour from their little bits of banter, talking about things, fear of things like the self-destructive nature of the human condition and Spider Women, and repeated talks of about football. One of them mentions that he's, like, missing the most important football match of his life for this. And there's even callbacks to the, they think it's all over, iconic, England football quote. It's, it's because the film does a great job of building up that team dynamic. We're really invested in them. And, it really keeps us invested in the overall story. And there are, of course, other characters in here as well with very strong personalities as well, like the character of Megan, played by Emma Cleesby, who, takes the soldiers in when they're in need of rescue and ends up caught up in the middle of this fight for survival. And then, of course, there is the film's probably the scene stealer of Captain Ryan, played by Liam Cunningham. And yeah, he is great as this, ruthlessly mission-focused soldier who has a bit of an agenda of his own and regularly butts heads with the army guys. He is such a great antagonist here. Because all these characters have, very memorable and strong personalities, there you go. The film develops them very, very well and really keeps us invested in them. And it makes the, overall, stakes of this, tense, dangerous battle for survival, that much more tense and gripping. And to its credit, it is a very well-made film as well. It's beautifully shot, really utilizing the natural settings of the Highlands, particularly, obviously, nighttime shots, again, leaning into the whole werewolf thing. It's beautiful, and, I really love that Second Sight and their transfer actually preserved the grainy film look of it. It's, it is wonderful. And, by the end, the film, because it does a great job of building the characters, it means that when they have to make the difficult choices, those moments really hit hard emotionally, and it also delivers some really interesting twists and turns, some of which were actually rather surprising. And yeah, when this thing goes all out by the end, it is just glorious and so satisfying. Yeah. Yeah, this really delivered on my expectations. Overall, Dog Soldiers is a very interesting take on a werewolf movie that really utilizes every penny of its small budget to deliver a tense and gripping experience. Out of 10, Dog Soldiers gets 9 pumpkins. So, let me know down in the comments, have you seen Dog Soldiers? What did you think of it? What do you make of Second Sight's restoration of it? And what's your favourite werewolf movie? Let me know all that down in the comments. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up button if you enjoyed. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you're new. And don't forget to turn on post notifications so you don't miss an upload.